Can you feel it? I can. Oh yeah. Welcome to the podcast. Oh yeah. Coming attractions. Oh yeah, coming attractions. Gotta love those attractions coming. Here it comes, yeah. Coming attractions, yeah. Coming attractions. Alright. Do you need some cab fare? Welcome to our lovely podcast. My name's Dan Flegg. I'm here with Nick Milligan and Joe Frost. Guys, how you going?
I'm very well, Dan.
I'm getting by.
Getting by. That's what I like to hear. Look.
And I do mean that in the most sexual of ways. Anyway.
Excellent. We're off to a great start. So, Nick, I understand you've been to the latest Hollywood blockbuster being Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Tell me a little bit about the film.
With pleasure, Dan. This is a little bit of a rundown on Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is a cinematic continuation of the multi-billion Harry Potter universe. Oh, I'll start that again. I've already fucked it up. I think I said Fantastic Beats.
You did.
Which is,
I did. I was like,
It's
a
like
very
the
pro-vegetable
best
film.
It's a vegetable
Yeah.
film. Yeah.
All right, let's go again.
Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is a continuation of the multi-billion-dollar Harry Potter universe and sees writer J.K. Rowling pen her first original screenplay. The name of the movie is the title of a textbook that is referenced in the Harry Potter novels, a document of rare and wonderful magical creatures. The book's author, Newt Scamander, a magi-zoologist, is the protagonist of this new movie. We meet Newt, played by Eddie Redmayne, as he's arriving in New York City circa 1920s. It's just after World War I. Newt is an environmentalist and natural historian who carries a suitcase full of what can only be described as fantastic beasts. It puts Mary Poppins' bottomless handbag to shame. As creatures escape the suitcase, Newt's presence in America is brought to the attention of the Magical Congress of the United States of America, the Yank version of the Ministry of Magic. They're not happy about the importation of the creatures in Newt's bag. Meanwhile, one of the Congress's senior agents, Percival Graves, played by Colin Farrell, is paying particular attention to a street urchin named Credence, played by Ezra Miller. The reasons behind this become clear as the movie unfolds. That's the plot,
So,
without giving too much away.
I understand this film operates in a starkly different environment to Hogwarts, as we all know and love in the original Harry Potter franchise. We're in a post-World War I New York. How is it delivered? What does it look like? Is it a... Give me a bit of a feel as to the vibe of the city.
Well, look, it's been beautifully recreated. Awesome sets. Obviously, $180 million budget, and it looks fantastic. They've completely recreated it. The costuming, obviously all the vehicles and things like that. It's been done seamlessly, and a lot of the really interesting scenes in the movie take place in darkened back alleys and things like that. There's a great set piece that takes place in Central Park. So they've really used, key locations from New York City to sort of to stage some of the big set pieces.
Interesting. And does it feel, as a viewer, do you feel like it's a bit of a fish out of water because we're not in the surrounds of, this wizarding school we're usually in? Does it feel right? Is there cohesion there as far as, I guess, that blend of the normal world and the wizarding world?
Well, absolutely, because of course you're seeing all this magic take place in real streets. So the destruction is quite palpable because it's actual buildings and homes being destroyed when things start to go awry. So yeah, that side of it's really really nicely delivered.
So Nick, I guess this is a question that maybe you're gonna have to flag me on and say spoilers, and therefore I'm not gonna answer it. the thing about the Harry Potter films was that they were all set generally around Hogwarts. And therefore, it was like this, these little pockets of wizarding and humans weren't around or muggles weren't around. This is happening in what is one of the greatest, most populous and broadcast cities on the planet, even in the 20s. Am I asking too much to say what happens with that with regards to, wizards and muggles, or?
Well, obviously, when Newt's creatures start to get out, it starts to draw attention to the magical world. They have, methods in place, obviously, of wiping people's memories, that sort of thing, the whole Men in Black sort of thing. And that it becomes harder to contain. So there is this tension, of course, where the wizards are trying to maintain their secrecy and having a bit of a hard time of it. And that sort of escalates in the final stanza, you might say. And that's a big theme. The wizards in the movie basically hide in the shadows, and there's a bit of a clash of ideologies that happens where, obviously some of them see themselves as being superior to humans and don't want to remain in secrecy. They want to, have the freedom to be themselves.
And what is a very, it's a powder keg of a time. I think it's set in 1926, late, sort of mid-20s.
Yep.
Just before the stock market crashes and before the rise of fascism in Europe. These are ideologies that are, well, very interesting and worth exploring in particularly with this idea of wizardry, where there would certainly be wizards, and we saw it throughout the entire Harry Potter series of, this guy who says we are superior to them and they should be our slaves. And do they delve into that? Does it get particularly dark, or?
Not so much. It's sort of implied that there was some wizardry involved in World War One, but it's only really alluded to.
Really?
Yeah, a little bit. That it sort of happened in a little bit of a parallel, and that the wizards weren't uninvolved.
That's exciting moving forward. I'd be really interested to see how they flesh that out in subsequent films, if they do. And as you've mentioned as well, Joe, there's a lot of heady topics that they could cap off.
Start in the mid-20s with plans for 5 films to come, and apparently the last one is going to finish in 1945. What, are they just going to go, what was happening with the Muggles anyway? Surely the whole point is to delve into the darkest period in human history.
So you think there's going to be, the Fuhrer will be capped off in a Harry Potter film?
I wonder.
Wow.
Whether, maybe he was a dark wizard and this will come up, or if just other wizards, or I don't suppose there was any part to play in that in the...
Well, no, but I think it's reasonable to assume moving forward that, being kids' films, I don't know how much they can get into Nazism, but I doubt that J.K. Rowling will ignore it. I think it'll have to become a big part of it. And how they handle that we'll have to see. But it's highly likely that Hitler might have a wand of some kind.
So you touched on something interesting there. It's a kids' film?
Well, in a way, yeah. It's quite dark at times. There's a few scenes regarding this sort of part of the evil forces in it, which there's a few jump moments, definitely. It's probably on a level that a lot of kids wouldn't fully comprehend. There's a lot of metaphors at play. But, look, I wouldn't take small kids to see it. I imagine it's PG. It wouldn't be anything less than that. So, it's definitely for older kids. There's some dark concepts in it.
Obviously, J.K. Rowling's always made a point of evolving and growing the franchise with what was a young audience. The latter books and films are a lot darker than those first couple before Prisoner of Azkaban.
And she's got some pretty dark places to go if she's going to go with 5 films.
100%.
And I don't think it's going to be as the Harry Potter films were, year at a time. I think it's...
And that generation that read the books are young adults now, or adults, basically. So that the audience has actually grown.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Tell me about the performances. Who stands out for you in this film?
They're pretty solid. I mean, Eddie Redmayne is the center of the film, and he's one of this new generation of actors coming through. He's certainly got a huge amount of range. He's a chameleon, really, and for a leading actor to have so much range, it makes it really interesting. I was just thinking before, he's sort of like a strange cross between Daniel Day-Lewis and Hugh Grant. So he's
Strange is the word I would use.
he's a hybrid, of those two.
Yeah. He's like the Prius of the acting world at the moment, isn't he?
Yeah. And Newt's an interesting creation. He's a like I said before, he's a magizoologist. He's a conservationist. He's an environmentalist. The whole idea behind the Fantastic Beasts is
He's a dancer.
he's a Renaissance man, and he's basically gone around the world and he's rescuing endangered creatures that exist in this suitcase. It's like an ark of a kind. So. There's a whole interesting side to it, but Eddie Redmayne's really strong. He's sort of obviously very socially awkward and bumbling, but obviously highly intelligent as well, and very much the pure, good guy in the movie.
Can I ask, how is Catherine Waterston? She's you don't want to group someone in on, but inevitably you say, hey, it's Sam Waterston's daughter.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was.
Yeah, she is. I mean, is she? Is it a case of Sam Waterston's daughter got a gig, or is it a case of this actress is well worth her
place
wage
in the movie? Absolutely, yeah. She plays the love interest. She works for the Congress of Magic.
Tina, I believe.
Yeah, and they just call her Tina in the movie. And yeah, I mean, it's sort of ironic. Very early on in the movie, she's actually the one that arrests Newt and to present him to the Congress. She's been demoted, and she's trying to prove herself to get back into the upper echelon of sort of secret agents, or auras, I believe they're called in the movie. And she's a nice, nice sort of contrast to him. She's a bit more forward and a bit more sort of regimented in the way she goes about things. But she's fine. She's not incredibly awesome, but she's solid enough. And look, Colin Farrell plays an interesting villain, which he does very competently. So
Colin Farrell goes all right. I'm a big Colin Farrell fan.
Well, so am I. And in the right role, he's actually incredibly good. He doesn't have heaps to work with in this. He's sinister, but like it's not over the top. He plays it pretty straight. But
so is it fair to say that battle of ideologies becomes a pretty recurrent theme in this film?
Definitely. Yeah, and I think that's going to be, moving forward, the main sort of source of tension in the magic world. So
kind of like the X-Men series offered a little bit of that. Is that what we're looking at here? It's just no one's necessarily right or wrong. They just have a different system of beliefs.
Yeah, basically. He's sort of the Magneto character in a way. So he obviously has a little bit of a different ideology to the wizards, who are kind of just resigned to the fact that they're going to, for the sake of peace and humankind, they're going to kind of hide their true selves. And he's asking the question, well, why? Why should we have to? Which is quite a legitimate question, I suppose.
Now, we were discussing, apparently it's $180 million budget. It's also called Fantastic Beasts.
Yes.
And where to find them. How fantastic are the beasts?
Look, they're reasonably fantastic.
Reasonably fantastic.
They're odd. They're basically all based on real life animals. They're all identifiable in some way. Without giving too much away, the first beast you see is basically a platypus.
Shout out to Australia. Okay.
I love that hat tip.
That's how you get the Australian market in. Just chuck a platypus in there, and it's a kleptomaniac platypus. So it runs around and basically pickpockets and hoards jewels and money. The reasons are never quite explained, but it just has a taste for shiny things. And then from there on, there's all different sizes and shapes of all these creatures.
But they do indulge the Fantastic Beasts side of it. It's not
essentially. A number of them escape at the beginning of the film, and you don't know which ones have escaped. And there's a few sequences where he goes out looking for them. So there's these nice little sides where he goes exploring to try to find, wandering through New York to find these creatures. So, I mean, I wouldn't want to give too much away, because when you do eventually see them, one of them in particular is pretty spectacular. So, yeah, that's sort of the more whimsical side of the movie. There's dark stuff that goes on, but then there's these really sort of fun set pieces where he goes off trying to put these animals back into the suitcase.
In broad strokes, how has David Yates handled this? This is his 5th Harry Potter film now, if you count the two-parter with the Deathly Hallows, and I think Order of the Phoenix was there as well. In broad strokes, how does the film feel to you? I've heard issues with editing and things like that. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, it's well directed. All I would say generally is that the film's too long. From an editing perspective, it's probably about 15 minutes too long. There's a point towards the end where it could have cleanly been ended, and there's this other little bits that kind of it labours the point a bit towards the end. But in terms of direction, I mean, he obviously handles the action really well. The film looks great, and the performances are strong. So you can't fault his direction. He's obviously pretty familiar with the material, so it plays out like, and it feels like the other It feels like the other Harry Potter films to a large extent, even though it's set in New York. So
you got the member berries out.
The member berries.
Oh, sorry, you don't watch South Park. No, yeah. Remember Harry Potter?
I guess my question to you would be, is it worth going to see at the cinema? Is this something that you should head along to?
Yeah, definitely. It's been made for the big screen. Like I said, these big sequences, but particularly the finale, it's pretty exciting and visually pretty interesting. So definitely worth seeing on the big screen, I would say.
Certainly sounds like the future's bright for this re-envisioning, I suppose, of the Potter franchise.
It's going to be really interesting. I can see it getting pretty dark. I mean, unless they introduce other characters. I mean, like I said, the bit of brevity comes from these moments where there's these a few of the creatures are cute, and he's trying to, he's running around trying to capture this platypus. It's a bit of a comic moment. But unless they keep introducing things like that, which are more, leaning towards the children's market, I can see it actually getting a bit more adult. So it'd be interesting to see what the next film's like.
I remember being like 15, 16 years old, and I'd read my first 2 or 3 Harry Potter books, and I was going somewhere with my mum, and I was talking to her about them, telling her why she should read them, and I was saying, I really feel like there's a prequel in these, and that they'll focus on James and Lily Potter, on Harry's parents, because they'd become such strangely seminal characters without anything really being said about them. People would just say, your parents were great, Harry, and that was all you really knew about them. And I always figured if they were going to go any further with it, that would be where they'd go. But instead, they've gone back some 60 years to take it all the way back to the 20s. And Harry Potter is based in the early 90s to the mid 90s. This is a long time beforehand in general. How much crossover with the Harry Potter universe is there? With, again, spoilers.
Yeah, of course. Look, not a lot. I mean, if you're really familiar with the books, you'll probably pick up on smaller things. There's references to characters. Newt himself was a student of Hogwarts, and he was expelled from Hogwarts for being, basically. Well, he sort of explains it away as it wasn't his fault, sort of thing, but it was to do with him, with these animals and whatnot. So there's little connections to it, but other than that, I wouldn't say. I don't want to spoil too much, but it doesn't have all these characters popping up as them younger selves and all this sort of thing. It actually feels quite separate.
Yep.
From a character perspective, so you feel like you are getting a fresh range of characters, basically.
And it should as well. This is, whilst we keep connecting it to the Potter lineage, it should feel independent of that. It's in a completely different continent. It's different characters in a different time period. If it felt too samey, you probably would have some reservation with the way in which the subsequent films are going to roll out too.
Well, from a purely cynical viewpoint, there's more money to be made if you create a whole other lineage and story and I guess legend.
Hey, Harry Potter's parents, they had parents.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
And if we know anything,
man,
magic's
Snape's
passed
parents,
down.
There's plenty of parents to come in.
exactly.
So there's a Lestrange in it, I saw.
Yeah.
Do you know what? Maybe we should leave that there, or is that okay?
I don't know if I should say anything else. I'll say that, which you can find out on Internet Movie Database, Zoe Kravitz plays Lita Lestrange, and in the film, she is a black and white photograph. She's on screen for about 1 second. So you can assume that she will pop up in the next couple of movies, you would think.
I guess just finally, if you were to rate the film out of 5, what would you give it?
I'd give it 3.5.
That's solid.
Yeah, pretty solid. Really enjoyable. It's a great bit of escapism. I don't think it reaches any amazing heights, but it's certainly incredibly enjoyable. And as someone, that's not super familiar with the Harry Potter universe, I've seen the movies, never read a book. I found it pretty fun, but it was a bit too long and a bit slow at times. There were definite lulls where the momentum slowed down, and I was aware that it was, this is a bit of a slow moment. So it probably could have been tightened by about 15 minutes.
All right. Well, stay tuned for part 2.
Welcome back. There's an apocryphal story, maybe it's true, that Reed Hastings, who is the CEO of Netflix, in the year 2000 made an offer to Blockbuster. Said, do you want to buy my company for $50 million? And Blockbuster basically laughed in his face. Now, in 2016, Netflix are preparing to spend the better part of $8 billion on original content and have made, well, we don't know that it's profit, but have turned over $2 billion in their latest statement. There's huge coin on it, and $50 million is, well, and to Blockbuster. Anyway, never mind. The story is that the next sort of venture for them is that Reed Hastings is making intimations towards Disney, and that Disney may be the ones to buy Netflix. Dan, what do you think? Is there something to this? Would Disney want to buy Netflix?
The speculation certainly suggests so, purely because Disney may be one of the few companies that has the coin to be able to buy now. And when I say that, it's become apparent due to some huge purchases that have been made by telecommunications company AT&T. So they've just bought Time Warner. So for those playing at home, they own all of the Warner Brothers franchise, film. They own all of the films there. They also own HBO. So they're the two real big players. And it is staggering money at the moment. $85 billion was spent making this happen. And one of the reasons why it did is because an online distribution service is now going to be created using this material. It's averaging US around, it'll be under $40. But the question remains, what will Disney do to counteract that? And that's where this speculation's coming from. You can't just have all of the Warner Brothers films and HBO on a new operating service for online users, and Disney aren't going to just step aside and say, good luck with that venture. They're going to want a slice of the pie too.
I hadn't even thought. This is Bugs versus Mickey round 2. Like, this is...
We've got a Roger Rabbit scenario going at the moment, guys. It is interesting stuff, though. I mean, it makes me wonder, will Disney get on board with this? Netflix seems like the most viable way in which to do so because they don't have to create a new operating system. It's already there, and it's been hugely successful. The price point will be an interesting one, certainly, but I guess I'm interested as well as to what it will do for their content. Now, they're already spending a lot of money creating original ideas, and they've done really well. In fact, when we talked about Netflix breaking the $2 billion in their last financial quarter, it was purely based off their 2 original shows, being Stranger Things and Narcos. So obviously, that's working. I mean, what do you guys think about it? Do you envision that if Disney were to get involved with Netflix, that we'd see a variety of new content based around some of the big names that they have?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it makes sense for Disney to they have to buy into this market at the moment. This is the future of film and television distribution. It's a way to alleviate piracy. They've got to get in. And if they were to buy something established like Netflix, which you would think would be... I mean, they could launch something new, but it would make sense for them to... I mean, they've already got Marvel content on Netflix. There's already that connection there. But yeah, you'd basically have a subscription service which has the entire back catalogue of Disney, which now includes, of course, all the LucasArts content. So I can see a future of original content from... With the example of Star Wars. I mean, there could be a Star Wars television show.
Which has been talked about for decades now. And my understanding was the price point in making a show that was to the quality of what the films already were was a big issue. Not so much anymore now. When you watch Game of Thrones spend $2 million per episode some of the episodes in the latter seasons.
Well, even more. I think upwards of 10 million. I think the finale of the last season.
That's incredible money.
So good.
Amazing.
It
It was.
better than some of the best films you'll see in years.
Probably the best battle sequence I've ever seen.
So claustrophobic.
Yeah, incredible. So
You know that one scene which you're talking about was actually written on the day. It wasn't penned in the original script, and they needed another scene, and they were running out of money for that particular episode. And they're like, we need to do something here, and they went with, because they had so many bodies on the actual extras that are in those scenes. Like, there's a lot of people there. It's not CGI for the most part. So they
Struggled
used
through my Tim Tam and cup of tea at that point. It was tough going.
It is interesting, though, knowing that Disney own, their legacy
Cup of
Disney back catalogue. So all of the films that are, in the so-called vault, and all of the other shows that they've done there. And you're right, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is something that's there. That's one of their IPs. And Star Wars as well.
and Pixar. All the Pixar stuff.
And
I mean, why not have I'm sure they've already done Toy Story spin-offs, but there could be a whole animated TV series based on existing characters or something new. You could have a Pixar, 12 episodes a season show.
They might even have like a full channel there. Maybe they go that way about it. So Netflix actually will have, kind of subcategories, which is just that. And their animated shorts have been immensely popular as well. You might kind of see them fleshed out a little bit more.
Or just have more of them. I mean, they're really popular. Like that one that's been doing the rounds with the bird, the oyster catcher. I mean, that's been hugely popular. They do really good animated short films. Often get nominated for Academy Awards and whatnot. So, between Pixar and LucasArts and all these studios they already own, I mean, it's pretty exciting. If you're a Star Wars fan, I think in particular, there could be a lot more content. They're already making spin-off movies. They're already making the most of their investment in LucasArts. So, yeah, you're going to see all kinds of shows come out, I would imagine.
Well, I mean, never even mind just the old content. I mean the old content, the likes of Marvel and Lucasfilm that they're bringing in. Think of the old Disney stuff. There's so much Disney stuff. Like, I remember being a kid and we would watch Mousecize, where it was, Mickey Mouse exercising. Like, I don't know, it's their version of...
like a Jane Fonda exercise
Jane
video.
Fonda exercise video, but it was
Richard
Mousecizes. And they have got so much content. They created...
Merry Melodies as well. They had a lot of non-traditional character-based animations.
The Three Caballeros, like, there's
They did
so much
all the
stuff.
all the Muppet stuff as Disney as well.
There's so much stuff that they've got that they could wheel out and could say, hey, it's the remember this, and it's
Tailspin, DuckTales, like things from my childhood that
Darkwing Duck.
they don't even I don't even know where you get a physical copy of that. A lot of that's VHS stuff. So it's for the first time for a lot of people, you're probably going to get HD remakes of their legacy catalog. That's incredible for fans of the House of Mouse.
And I don't know, having not seen it since I was 8 and 9 years old, I don't think it would have really aged so badly that an 8 or 9 year old these days would go, oh, that's ridiculous. Like, it's, a silly fantastical thing about a superhero duck or a billionaire duck, like whatever it is. The side of it is so ridiculous to begin with as a cartoon that it doesn't age. It's not going to be a problem 20 years down the track where a kid goes, well, where's his smartphone? Like, I think it will go well enough that parents would say, I'd watch this with my kid.
The film-to-TV crossover element that exists across some of these big IPs, your Marvel, your Disney, and...
Well, Disney are doing it now, remaking every single one of their cartoons as a live action.
Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, but I mean, think about
Jungle Book.
the Marvel franchise. Obviously, there's been a partition, I suppose, between what they've been doing with their street-level Marvel characters in Jessica Jones and Daredevil and the likes. Will we see more of these Hollywood A-listers now make appearances? I think a lot of the contracts now are going to be you get 3 films and you've got to make 3 appearances in our TV shows as well. What that does for the tapestry of these universes is incredible. It's really going to start to feel like a really filled out world that doesn't sit in, universe A, B, and C. And we're finally going to get something that's all interconnected properly. And that's something I think a lot of that's been lacking.
And of course, as these budgets increase, you are going to get more A-listers. I mean, we're seeing it more and more in television. Actors you never thought would revert back to TV are jumping on board. So it'll almost certainly be the case. It'll be all interconnected. And if they start throwing money at fresh Marvel shows, why not have these characters from the films crossover?
It's a fabulous way as well to combat online piracy with pre-existing material, not having to make new stuff and lose money on it as well. And I'm sure they're thinking that at the moment, going, we have this incredible back catalogue. Obviously, with the Time Warner acquisition from AT&T, they're thinking the same thing. That's got to be a thought in the minds of these execs at the moment. We can actually recoup cash that we're losing.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So the dark horse in all of this is, when did Netflix introduce ads? And they will. It's coming.
So you think a premium service will be introduced? Is that what you're saying?
I would think so, because at the moment, all right, you think about all the ad-free services that you've got. Think of Foxtel when it first came out, ad-free. It ain't ad-free anymore.
Mm.
Think of Facebook, ad-free for years. Now, you scroll through Facebook and it is hammered with ads. SBS. Like if you want to make money, you got to have ads. And the way that you make money from your ads is that, to begin with, it's reciprocity. You go, hey man, here's all this stuff for free. Now, granted, it's not for free. It's $10 a month. But if you've got a decent wage, $10 a month, man, if you've got a shitty wage, $10 a month, no, you can afford that. And then someone goes, oh, we might put in a couple of ads like at the end of a show, or, but they'll slowly insert them in. Ads are coming. They've got to be. But then there's the whole aspect of ads have changed, because they can target your ads exactly to you. What are you watching? What are you doing? They can be very, very specific with their advertising, and also targeted in the timing. And anyway, the point I'm making is, it's one thing to say Disney will buy it based on what's happened before. No. Netflix have got a long-term plan, 20, 30 years into the future, where ads have to be a part of it. They've got to be. Because they don't publish. Like we said, they made $2 billion. Not profit. $2 billion was their income. Who knows how much they spent? This is, if you want to make money, you got to have ads. And Netflix and Stan and all these streaming services, ads are coming. They've got to be.
It's tricky though, because back in the day, of course, there would be, when they were writing narratives for TV, like you see it in like shows like The X-Files, there are points where there's clearly meant to be an ad dropped in. And it's actually fade up and fade down if you watch X-Files without the ads. So do they have to start reworking the narrative and cutting in, if there's going to be adverts during a program? Does that start to shape the way that the narrative's working?
That's the magic of it as well, though, with a thing like Netflix, where you go and, if you watch a show, a half-hour show on free-to-air at the moment, it hits its ads and you go, oh, I'll have a flick. And it's ads on every other channel, because ads all work at the same time. Creators will be able to say, well, no, that's not where it works for me. I want to have my break be at this point in the story. And because you're not flicking between, you're not going to go, oh, Netflix. No, it's a streaming service. You've got to hold it out. You've got to go with it. And therefore it won't be your standard, won't necessarily be your standard, 3-act story. They could go somewhere else with it altogether. They could, put weight behind something. It could be, a 2/3 sort of thing. Or anyway, it could go a completely different way, because you don't have to adhere to, this is how a half-hour show works or a 1-hour show works, and it's got to have ads around the same time. Otherwise, people will lose interest.
I believe that they'll have ads during the load times between episodes. That's what will happen. So you're working with 20, 25 seconds, I suppose, something like that. That's where they'll start placing ads. It won't become like a serialized TV show. I think they'll still use the same formula, because they know that it works, but that is the perfect place in which to place ads. You're already waiting for the load anyway. It'll probably, as a streaming product, it'll already probably be attached in the load as well. So you've already, once it's loaded up the stream, it'll already have that ad tacked into the back of it. They'd be mad not to do it that way. I think if they start to, stuff around with the formula that they have at the moment, then they might lose listeners. I guess the other question is that I put to both of you is, if the price point changes for a premium service without ads, do you think it'll scare people off, or do you think, looking at what they have with this combined force of both, Disney at large and what Netflix already has, do you think it's, will that push people away, or do you think people just be like, well, I'm actually getting more and I don't want ads, so I might as well just pay an extra couple of bob?
Look, it's hard to say. I mean, for me personally, I would probably go with the cheaper version and put up with some ads if they weren't during the show. It's like Spotify at the moment, that format where if you've got the free service, every 10 songs or whatever it is, you're forced to listen to about 15-second ad spots. And you just sort of just turn the sound off or tune out, basically. But that's how they sort of force it upon you. I can see with the free or the cheaper version of Netflix, that's probably what would happen. So if you're watching a TV show, every episode they'll make you watch 15-second adverts, maybe 3 or 4 of them before you can load the next one. It's probably more likely. And the other thing, I suppose, is probably actual banner ads on the website to some extent as well.
Yeah, and banner ads just through your show. Yeah, pop-ups.
Yeah, so anything like that could happen. But I mean, the ads in general might not even prevent people from buying a platinum service. It might actually force them to go back to illegal streaming, and that's something that they might take into account. If you just want to sort of cleanly drop into a show, watch it, and not be faced with commercials, that'll be a consideration for them. People that can't be stuffed waiting and having to watch ads might start reverting back to piracy. So that's something they'll be throwing around. How do they make the advertising as present but not imposing? I think will be what the balance they'll be looking for.
100%, because what we've seen in the likes of something like HBO is that the cinematic experience, by and large, doesn't necessarily come from the amount of money that's been spent. It's that you're immersed in what's happening because you're not being bothered by being pulled away from this environment. If they start to stuff around with that, then I think you're going to have big problems with people just tuning out or going to another service because they want that, what is now a pretty traditional feel for some of the best stuff we see on TV.
You don't want it to get to like a Daenerys full frontal nudity scene and then suddenly cut to an advert the second her dress falls off. There'll be some smashed television sets, I would imagine. So
yeah, you're not thinking about buying a quarter pounder meal or something like that at that stage.
Well, maybe you are.
Your head's in a completely different game.
I wish I had a burger in one hand right now. Just a few old beef patties might go well.
That's it
with this Daenerys scene.
So I think the price point could be a lot higher than people would have even expected to begin with, if it is to go ahead, because there is this whole other revenue that Netflix have kept, not necessarily to themselves, but it's not sustainable. Again, if you're making such massive profits, then you publicize it. You don't just say, here's how much money we pulled in. You say, here's how much profit we made. And they don't publicize that, and therefore there's a long-term plan, and I think the long-term plan is to go to ads. And like you say, it could be a premium service. And the thing about Netflix that I guess a lot of people who haven't signed up for it, and not just Netflix, any of these streaming services, it's not to dismiss one, is that people think, oh, I'll sign up for Netflix and then I can watch whatever I want anytime I want. And like 90% of it sucks. Like, I'm just not interested in so much of what's there. But for $10 a month or whatever it is, it's less than $10 a month. It's well and truly worth it, because I go, okay, yeah, all right. At the moment, I'm interested in The Crown, and I've been interested in a handful of other shows, and each month it gets to that point, and $10 gets direct debited, and I go, oh yeah, it was worth $10. But if you start to get to a point where you go, I don't know, I'm getting hammered with ads, and I'm not really that tuned in, I don't actually watch it that often, and I don't really watch Netflix all that often, then you would have to start questioning things. And so it's a really interesting dilemma that they'll come with if it comes to ads. That said, really what we need to bring it back to is Disney content, and if Disney put all their content on it, and you need to remember, man, Disney content goes back to the 30s. And like Walt Disney, man, they could bring out the old TV shows where Uncle Walt presented it. Let me show you my vision of Disneyland. I would love to watch that. I would really like to see some of the old school 50s, 60s, 40s stuff that Disney produced to sell their brand back then. I would be really interested to see it. And there's a lot about Disney taking over Netflix that's really, really intriguing.
Look, it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out, I guess, in the coming months and years, I suppose. Look, stay tuned for the final part of the podcast next.
Welcome back to the show. Now, one of the big Star Wars announcements recently is that Emilia Clarke has been cast in the upcoming Han Solo spin-off, which is pretty exciting news for fans of Emilia. What do you guys think about her casting, and what role do you think she might play?
Dana, do you want to take this one?
Not sure who she will play. I'd like to think a love interest, I guess. How will she go in the role? Difficult to say until we know more about who is she going to be. They are putting together a fairly interesting cast at this point as well. Obviously with Donald Glover coming on as a young Lando Calrissian. I think that's a pretty inspired choice, and I think he's got the bravado to do it. But I guess we need to know more about who is this character and where will she be placed, I guess, even as far as worlds are concerned as well. Is she a smuggler like Han is, or are we going even further back? Unfortunately, we don't have enough about plot as well with this film. We don't know where we're going to be starting with Han. Like, there's in the extended universe, he was actually an Imperial soldier before defecting. So I don't know if that's even going to be in it. But I think she's got the clout to do it. But again, I need to know what is her role.
There's a whole world of possibilities they open up with having Han Solo having another love interest, that she may be his earlier girlfriend, wife, whatever have you, and from there the possibility that maybe they had a kid together, maybe she was Force sensitive, maybe she was a Jedi, that kind of thing. I mean, based on what Han Solo was like as a young man in the first sort of, well, in A New Hope, he was not sold on the whole thing. And it would be interesting to have, well, it would be maybe easy to sell. The reason he's so against the whole idea is, oh yeah, well, you know what, my first wife was one of those, and none of that really panned out. I could only imagine that if she is to be the love interest, she's going to have to die.
I was wondering that, yeah. Does she make it out of the film?
It's the only way of it that makes sense, unless, and this is the way they play it, it doesn't work out for the two of them, and then they've then got, well, because they've got episode 8 to come out, but then between episode 8 and episode 9, they'll have the Han Solo film, which will reference this whole new character played by Emilia Clarke. And Emilia Clarke's not signing up to be nobody. She's not signing up for a 1-minute cameo. It's the new way of Hollywood casting. She's a massive, massive star, even if her films have been kind of shit. She's the Khaleesi. It doesn't matter. She's a big star. And
she played a good Sarah Connor. She brought something to that film. It wasn't the best film, but in the Terminator franchise, she wasn't too bad.
I think the way I see this working is, I think she'll be a love interest. Let's not attach her straight away to Han. You've got a young Lando here. They're very competitive in the original trilogy as well. In fact, the fabled Millennium Falcon is one during a card game. Lando owned the ship and then loses it to Han. So, long-time rivals, I kind of feel like it might go that way. She might be maybe playing them against one another. There might be a little bit of that. It might be creating some bad blood in which we see fleshed out in the original trilogy. And I think that would be great. That could be a really good way.
Classic moment where Lando kisses Leia's hand.
Leia's
and,
hand.
her hand. And, and he says, all right, you old smoothie, tells him to back off.
There might be context to that now. That's interesting. Now, funnily enough, so as many.
He's the smoothest man in the galaxy.
Well, does Han perhaps lose her in a card game to Lando?
Ooh.
Throws her on the table, so to speak.
Oh, I'll leave that one there, I think.
And Childish Gambino just swoops in.
It's possible. Look, obviously, a lot of the material that had been released, up until a very recent point, as far as Star Wars things are concerned, has been wiped from the record. It's now regarded as legacy material. So a lot of stuff doesn't count as far as the ongoing continuity. However, there's been a run of comic books that have been released about all things Star Wars, and one of them is on Han Solo and Leia, and there is a storyline, and apparently this is a part of the ongoing continuity where Han had a first wife, and she has her own ship and manages to track him down at some stage. So the scoundrel we all know and love might have been a lot more of a scoundrel than we were first led to believe. Is it that going to be tied in? Who knows? It could be. It could be a possibility. So I'll be very interested to see where they take that one, I guess.
Well, they need to bring in another human or humanoid woman, because at this point in the Star Wars mythology, you've got Rey, you've got Princess Leia, and you've got Mon Mothma. And that's kind of it. They really need to have more women who are part of the legend and the mythos of the whole thing. This whole idea of who is this person, and I think that they don't bring in a person that brings such scope to a character just for the sake of saying, yeah, she's the love interest in this film, and that's the end of it. Like, they're bringing her in because I would think, because they want to make it a grander part of the whole story, that she can then be involved in episode 9, or if not her, then possibly Han Solo's other child.
That would be a very interesting development.
She might not be human. There's nothing to say that she's going to be human. I mean,
wow, good point. Really good point.
Like, she could be. Hey, it's a big universe.
Shit, I didn't even think of that.
Yes, she could be any number of things. At the moment we've got Snoke, who appears in the most recent film as like a 20-foot tall kind of aged god kind of character. It's not outside of the realms of possibilities that she's some form of alien.
Or a giant. A 20-foot tall
giant alien.
I'll tell
she
you
could
what,
be all of the above.
Han and Lando are going to have some trouble wooing that lady. I can tell you that much. Yeah. What'd you say? I find it interesting. I'm glad. I had a lot of trepidation about this film. I didn't really think it needed to happen. I felt as though Harrison Ford's portrayal of this character couldn't really be surpassed. But they've got Lawrence Kasdan on board, who's famously known for penning the original scripts for Return of the Jedi and Empire Strikes Back, and obviously he's been on board for Episode 7 as well. I feel as though it might be in safer hands than I was first led to believe. I think they're not going to take a run at this without thinking they've got something here, and the cast is certainly pointing to that now.
And do you know what? It's like you said, I wasn't sure they needed to do it, and I felt like young Han, who now we've speculated as to how to pronounce it. Alden Ehrenreich?
I think that'll do.
Yeah, we'll go with Alden. Anyway, I mean, he's almost on a hiding to nothing. And it is one of those things that you then turn around to, look, mate, no one expects you to be how can you be better than Harrison Ford? He's, one of the great actors of all time. And particularly because he brings this gruff sensibility to every character he's ever had. I think it was Lawrence Kasdan who said, yeah, well, you don't become that character. You're not born that way. You have to have things happen to you in your life that make you that sort of cynical, gruff human being. And that's, I guess, the way that it's going to be easier for this kid to play it is to say, yeah, well, to begin with, Han Solo was an opportunistic or a guy who believed in what he was doing before things turned that way on him. And there's a lot about that I suppose gives him a bit of scope to not necessarily be Well, you know what? He doesn't need to be Han Solo. He doesn't need to be the Han Solo that we know and love from Harrison Ford.
Yes, he does. I disagree with you wholeheartedly. This is what I was thinking before as well. So, in a matter of weeks, Rogue One comes out. I'm really worried that these films are being placed after the fact for some of the big moments that have happened inside of the story arcs for the original trilogy, because we've seen it go wrong before. 1, 2, and 3 tried to neatly compartmentalize and put together all of the elements, all the questions that we had about the original trilogy. And I would say, whilst there's some great set pieces, some good moments, by and large, it failed miserably. And they could be in that scenario again right now. He doesn't have to be Harrison Ford's portrayal of Han, but he's got to be quite a lot like it. He has to offer that.
I wanted you to say just then he's got to be a dick.
Well, he kind of does, because Han's a dick. But that's great, though. I mean, he's got the redemptive qualities that exist inside of that character is half the reason that you love him. He's not a great bloke at the start of episode 4, and he slowly comes around. That could be exciting, because if he wasn't a good bloke at the start of episode 4, what was he like 10 years beforehand or 5 years beforehand?
But do you not want to see a guy who is, I guess, a bit innocent and believes in these things, who is not broken, but is turned into the guy who you first meet in episode 4, who is Chewie 10,000, like he's just worried about the money.
He's a money-hungry scumbag,
Yeah.
who would sell out his own mother to pay off that debt with Jabba. And that's
not
fine.
his own Wookiee, though.
No. Great to see that Chewie is going to make an appearance.
Yep.
I wonder if he's going to be in the whole film. I kind of feel like we might get him right at the end. He might be introduced, and maybe they don't need to show all of the cards with this one. That's what I was trying to say before. We don't need this really tightly woven story about everything Han Solo. Parachute us in. Let's see a little bit of that kind of stuff, and then we leave again. I don't really know if we need to know like the age that Han's parents died, or like all this stuff that I don't know about now.
They don't need to go full Marvel with it.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like the mistakes that have been made in the past with these films is that they felt the need to tell us every little thing about the mysteries that exist inside the mythos of Star Wars, of this universe. And that's where these films fell apart because of that. Like not all of them, but 1, 2, and 3 has a lot of problems. And that purely came down to Lucas pandering to what the people wanted and the questions that had been unanswered for decades. And I really, really worry, as I've said before, that they maybe are thinking about going down that path now.
Now, Nick, as someone who's a Star Wars fan without being perhaps as
obsessed.
Yeah, okay, if that's the way we're going to go with it. What are your thoughts on the Han Solo film and I guess Emilia Clarke, but just in general?
Well, there's a couple of things. I'm intrigued to know actually what age he will be, because I think the actor playing him would be well into his 20s, is my impression. I mean, how old do you think Han is when we meet him in A New Hope? He would have been more than
much older than that, could he?
He's meant to be pretty young.
Well, I mean,
was
we
young.
all got a bit of a refresher on how old Harrison Ford was this week when Carrie Fisher came out and said he was 34 and I was 19 when we had our affair during the filming of episode 4, or as it was called at the time, Star Wars. But so, all right, so let's imagine he's 34.
He's sci-fi's Luke Perry, isn't he? It's crazy. It's like, how old's this bloke? I don't know.
So I'm intrigued to know that, how old is he? Are we meant to believe he's going to play a 16-year-old Han? The other thing that I would put money on is that there will be the grand meeting scene between Chewie and Han.
Yeah,
Definitely. That'll be a big moment in the movie when they first meet.
They got to show the whole why, because it's that Chewie owes Han a life debt. That Han has in some way saved his life.
Right.
Presumably because he was on Kashyyyk and saved him from a lifetime of slavery. But
a number of different ideas have been put forward in their
which,
time.
again, so many of have been dismissed because it's not...
They hit the reset button.
Yeah.
So a lot of the books, a lot of the novels, a lot of the supplementary stuff that was akin to the original trilogy was just completely wiped. It's only until very recently that they've actually started to reintroduce the elements they want. Rebels, the animated show, which is actually getting pretty high praise at the moment, they introduced Grand Admiral Thrawn, I believe the pronunciation is. And he is a really much loved character in books that now don't really count, and they've reintroduced him. So it'll be interesting to see where they do go with Chewie. I've read another thing as well that I think whilst Han was in the Imperial Academy or something like that, he had some form of stormtrooper role and then saved Chewie's life in some scenario. And then for years, he followed him around. Like they didn't become friends. He wore him down. Which is actually kind of nice. I like that vibe. I hope that's kind of in there. Maybe that he's already exists. Maybe they even go into how the life debt happened, and he's just like, why is this Wookiee following me around?
He's being stalked.
I'm being stalked by
He keeps looking around, and Chewie's behind a tree.
A 7'4" hairy behemoth.
What's the money that Emilia Clarke is playing a Wookiee, and they're going to put her in a hair suit?
Be a waste of money.
Oh, jeez. It is. Look, it's going to be interesting. I think we can all agree though that we need to see the plot fleshed out a little bit more before we can really speculate on whether or not someone can do their job in the role. Now we know we've got a couple of names that have been attached to certain roles, but without knowing what Emilia Clarke's going to do, it's kind of hard to know if she's going to excel in the role.
Again, we've got a couple of very, very good directors on board in Christopher Miller and Phil Lord. I was going to call him Chris Miller. We're not mates. I can't call him Chris.
Chris guy.
But they're guys who have done the Lego Movie, and at the moment they're at the helm of this TV series version of the podcast of Serial Season 2. They sort of do little bits and pieces and go for different different styles would be one way to describe it. But they're well known for being comedic directors, that they've done, comedy has been their forte. And you wouldn't call Han Solo the comedic relief by any stretch, but he's a funny guy without being funny. He's, I don't know.
He's dry.
Yeah, he's dry, a Coen Brothers film.
He's dry and he's stressed.
That was funny.
He's always agitated. Yeah. He's kind of like, it's like when your dad's got to take you out to to the dentist or something like that, and he forgets and he just gets really hungover. Like he's really hungover when he's got to take you out. He's got that attitude about him. He's like, oh, I'm labouring to do everything at the moment. I hate you, and I hate you, and I hate you. But look, I've got to go with this at the moment because as soon as I get this done, it's over, and I can go about my day. That's the kind of character that Han. You'd like to think he's going to be that way, but again, until we know his relative age, you don't know if he's going to be that jaded yet. Was this kid? Did he come out of the womb jaded?
And that's it again, where you were sort of saying, you want him to be kind of a dick, but do you? Do you want to see him maybe being the teenage Han before? And again, like you said, he could be a dick, and he needs to be kind of a dick because that's the Han Solo that you want, but you also do want to see how he gets to that point where he is money hungry and also, I guess, the fear that we discussed earlier with regard to Fantastic Beasts is how much of it do they delve into, and how much do they then, start saying, oh, okay, well, this is a whole thing that was explored in the later films that you go, oh, look, you didn't need to do that. And that is the fear, that they'll go way too deep into something.
What we can agree on, and I guess we haven't touched on it yet as well, is that we're really going to see the start of the Empire fleshed out. You got to assume that no matter what happens, this film's going to be based at a pretty pivotal time for the Empire at large. Their forces will be growing. I'm assuming he becomes a smuggler due to some issue that happens, and he feels like the best way to fight back is to essentially go underground, much in the same way that the Rebels do, but with more of a profiteering kind of angle going there. But the Empire is going to feature heavily in it. You've got to assume that that's going to... He's not going to be working and living isolated from their grasp, I guess, on the universe at large. And it makes me wonder who the big bads are going to be.
There'll be a new villain of some kind.
Yeah.
You would think. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
I guess you've got Vader in there.
I hope they don't have Vader in there. I don't think they need him. it's a huge
well,
organization.
they've got the old baddies to play on if they want. They've got the likes of
Boba Fett. I didn't even think about that.
I
Where
didn't
could-
even think of Boba Fett.
Could the Mandalorian factor in? He's a child in, kind of at episode 3, coming into 4. A young Mandalorian bounty hunter could be good. It's kind of like Muppet Babies. This is what I'm seeing here at the moment. So we're going to have all the characters you know and love, just a little bit younger, going on their
But
merry
they could
adventures.
go with General Grievous. Like, who knows how far? Again, it's how old are they, and therefore are they going back to, was he there in the Clone Wars? How old was he at that stage? Maybe he was. You'd think based on you don't know how old Luke is supposed to be in episode 4, and therefore how old Han is.
Isn't he like 16 or something? He's meant to be. He's under 20 in that film. Not
Okay.
that it matters, but yeah.
going through- he's
But
just
it
gone through
does. Like,
puberty.
again, you need to sort of think about this in terms of the timeline, and therefore, are any of the grand baddies from the prequel trilogy, are they going to feature in it? And they could bring them in, and purely from a marketing point of view, I bet they'd love to bring in a guy like General Grievous and go, man, that guy sold some toys. He was a sick toy seller with his, multiple hand lightsaber wielding. You bring a guy like that back in and you sell a bunch more toys.
I think you could argue as well, Jabba's going to feature at some point in the film, which is really interesting because you're going to be returned to Tatooine for a little bit, and there's a lot going on during that period of time. You have a young Luke Skywalker growing up on this planet. I mean, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
He's on that planet, hanging out there, waiting to turn into Sir Alec Guinness. So, yeah.
You mean old Obi-Wan Kenobi?
Yeah. So, I mean, you got to assume those big players that are a part of Han's universe are going to feature there. And I guess you're going to see some iconic locales. And I guess see, a young Greedo, that kind of stuff. You're going to get a lot of that kind of element.
They're going to make some sort of who shot first line, and I'm just not up for it.
I think if they're looking at the toy perspective, it'd be smart to make Chewbacca still a puppy. Make him about 1
Puppy?
foot.
We're going to use puppy?
Yeah, probably still a pup, whatever baby Chewbacca's
I
called.
see where you're going with it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
a little
because,
plush.
Yeah, adorable little Chewbacca where
Yeah.
they just go, yeah, that's the one. And that
Little
you
fur
then...
ball.
Because these, I mean, they made a BB-8...
They are smaller as well, aren't they? I forgot you see Wookiee kids in the battle at Kashyyyk.
Yeah.
So, but
They'd
how
be like
old is
that,
he?
a metre
Don't they get
tall.
really old? I can't remember.
But you could do it, your little life-size baby Chewbacca or teenage Chewbacca or prepubescent Chewbacca that's, I don't know,
Or do you have
4 or 5 foot tall, and people would be all over that.
we'd have like a birth scene.
Oh man,
With
He's there
Emilia
and-
Clarke, obviously, as the Wookiee mother, as previously discussed.
the mother of Wookiees.
It's weird that I'd really like to see that for some reason. Is that weird?
Yeah, it's weird, and I don't want to see it. Yeah, I hope that gets cutting room floor. That's what I just want. Yeah,
I want to see a little
Mother of
Chewbacca
Wookiees.
covered in placenta. Will be worth the price of admission alone.
I look. Let's just all agree that a Star Wars film doesn't need a home birth scene in it. I don't think.
Water birth.
Water.
Yeah.
A water. Wow. God, I hope they're on the desert planet for that, so that doesn't happen.
Well, actually, not to cull anyone's comedy too much, but I just realised Chewbacca is he's got his scenes in episode 3. So you would think if they're going to put it somewhere between 3 and 4, then he's going to be a full-grown adult.
Question remains: maybe we'll get more than one Wookiee. I kind of think it might go that way too. Maybe he had a family.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what
Well,
happened.
that-
Maybe
you
they
know,
get
that
killed or
was the
something like
whole-
that. Yeah.
Point of the Star Wars Christmas special.
Oh, the ill-fated Christmas
The
special.
ill-fated Christmas special with Chewbacca's kids. What were they like? Scratchy and Sneezy or something?
Bluey and Fooey, I think. They were. It was a bit
They
of like
worked
it was-
really hard on the names, like as hard as we worked just now.
I think we did the whole Chewbacca origin story while we're at it. We're doing the Han Solo one. That's just one that just follows Chewbacca. There's no English in it.
Have it like The Artist. It could be like, like a silent film. It's just like, Chewie doing his thing.
It's mine. Purely.
So we've worked our absolute asses off to find out where Amelia Clarke is going to fit in on the upcoming Han Solo origin story. Listen, that's all we've got time for this week. We'll catch you next week, and we'll see you then.